Okay, I'm gonna say this like I do most of the time when I start these, maybe just out of habit at this point, but I hope we're live. If we are, and anybody's on any of the platforms that happen to work with this API and then don't work again any given day, I'll see your chats appear down here. But listen, I want to kick this show off with a belief that I've been saying for a long time, and Steven's been saying, and so many others have been saying of we went from a time when if I managed an Exchange server, just to put this in frame, I had to have the right disks, the right types of speeds, the ability to manage the logs at scale on those devices, to manage the service pack updates, the updates themselves that automatically happen, have to update and take it down and plan on that, plan on the downtime, which means that there was like a lot to do to keep that thing working. And that extended into a lot of things that we do in all kinds of IT things, like way into everything, where you can get a computer profile come back, how a machine got joined to the domain, where it needed line of sight for GPOs, timing of GPO, like all that was part of our world to manage. By comparison to now, I sell you an Office 365 with Entra ID and extra bonus capabilities in the Defender bundles, and I can deploy a machine with autopilot. I can have it come back. You're using SaaS for the most part. There isn't Active Directory in a lot of cases, and we're starting to see a world where it's really commoditized. And when I fire up Angry Birds, Angry Birds, Angry Birds is every time. And so for me, that was somewhat of a wake up call of the commoditization of what we're doing and this pivot towards the security and the getting deeper in their business. Like, I need to know how you make money from quote to cash, what that means for my profitability, how I impact that, how I can manage operational efficiencies, all the things that I'm making up that this guy actually does. So, Stephen, why don't we go ahead and talk about this? Introduce yourself. I know people in my shows have seen you around before, and you help out our charity at Cyberrise and
Yeah.
all the things, but what do you do and what's your world like, man?
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. It's Stephen Kellogg, Blue Helm Tech, as you can see on the screen. And fundamentally, I do technologist work, is how I sum it up, and how that translates to other people. And I don't know if it's older terms now, but fractional CTO, fractional
Sure.
CIO type work. And that includes jumping in, like you said, understanding how the business works, where their bottlenecks are, and coming up with solutions.
Sure.
Also heavily involved with IR Game, and as you mentioned, Cyberrise, doing the
Well, let's
interim
talk about each
executive.
of them since this
Oh,
is
sure.
my show and I can do this, and I'm involved with both. So I'll
Yeah.
both do a full disclosure as well as, actually, we're, as well as, let us cover these. So what's IR Game, man? Like ELI5 for those that don't know.
Yep. IR Game. A lot of people are familiar with incident response tabletop exercises, kind of the manual version, if you will. We've taken something that Matt, you, and Ethan Tancredi from Huntress put together for a conference, and we have turned that into an online game that you can play through. It's really geared more towards hearts and minds and getting C-suite and technical people to realize the whole scope of an incident response versus just the technical. There are lots of good technical backdoors and breaches, as an example, tabletops that you can play, and this one actually covers a whole lot of the other stuff.
And what about Cyberrise, if you will, just since that allows me to type in the background and be the producer of this show as well as actually. So give me just a sec. I'm a little slow over here.
That's good. So yeah, Cyberrise, nonprofit started by Matt and Robert Chaffee, as well as Jason Slagle. So the three of you guys got together, formed Cyberrise, which is in essence working to lift the tide, rise the tide, as we say, or raise the tide for
Yeah.
the cybersecurity ecosystem.
Yeah.
Three
Awesome.
programs under that we could get into at some other point, but
Yeah, we have 3 programs: MSP 911, to be there on your worst day.org, frameworkmaps.org, which is our, and these websites are under development. I know that's why you didn't probably call them out. It's because we're
I did
working on
not.
this with our developer. I
Yeah.
will be that guy. You can see us at our ugliest, so that hopefully one day you see us at our prettiest. But anyways, we are working to serve educational as well as direct response roles in a lot of cases. The last program being under another program director, Adam, who is doing the hackening, which is trying to take and partner with colleges to provide MSPs as targets and benefactees, recipients of pen tests by college students, guided through existing partners to help them both get value out of real world experience. Yeah. So, and other educational extensibilities of that. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the topic. You and I were
Sure.
chatting. I started, and I'll just kick it off. I started by saying, Hey, Steven, I was doing boot camp, and I grade myself maybe a B plus on this at best, and it's mainly because I think day two is a pretty close to A aspect, or even maybe A plus, and then day one was, in my mind, I really think a C or a B minus, or maybe I don't know. I could be even more pejorative depending on how I felt at the night or now. Out of just the
And my
things, yeah.
and my consulting hat said, "Hey, let's talk about that day one."
Well, and that's exactly right. And so, to kick us right to that point, your consulting hat said, "Hey, let's just discuss day one." And I started sharing what I thought were some of the challenges of day one. Is that,
Yeah,
and maybe is it okay if I just start back and start the
sure.
story for people? All right, killer. So, our boot camp was this brainchild, and I'll give it the very short version. If you want to grab me aside or pop in some chat and guide this conversation, we can do that if you're watching. But I had this brainchild of saying in a boot camp that Dom and I had done that there's a challenge when you bring a technical set of directions. Boom, here you go, Stephen. I'm going to walk an entire audience of students through these commands and these things, explain them as we go, drive them through it. You either have to slow way down to capture the bottom side of the bell curve, or go extremely up to the top to capture the top. And I can get into stories and people saying both sides of that equation. And so you have this challenge, in my opinion, with those type of events where you're always serving a different experience to everyone in the audience, and maybe not in a great way, right? Because you have that one student that's still waiting on their Kali to be configured the right way. They didn't come with a VM. They're having to build from that ground up, even though you sent them instructions, all the way over to this other student's like, I just felt that wasn't enough, bro. I would rather us actually have a little more demonstrative and hands-on stuff. And I feel them. I mean, this is my own feeling in experiencing that, right? And I'm been blessed enough to be on the fast end, but then I watched Jason Slagle work and I realized like I'm a dullard. So it works. It's the same bell curve. I'm just on the left side in that scenario. But I digress. But anyways, I was talking about how day one still needs to serve this purpose of helping vendors feel like they've been represented. And so a lot
Yeah,
of what we were doing is like walking through the platform, showcasing stuff for 20 or 30 minutes per vendor. And one of my first thoughts was, well, I'll separate those out and put more fun stuff in between that. I still need to lay the groundwork. I still need to set the story and to share it with everybody. This is more like a murder mystery theater with a CTF attached, which serves the other half of my problem with security conferences and CTFs, is that most of the time the CTF is so encompassing that it doesn't lend you to go to the conference. I remember the ones that I've won. Jason and I and friends are just sitting around. There's a correlation again back to the dullard, non-dullard. But Jason and I are sitting around a table, and we just never go to any conference stuff. We just sat there and worked on this, capture the flag the whole time. And that was, I think, at MySecCon this year. And so I wanted to make a blend of that. And so what I did was this story-based explanation of building up a real company, putting in a learning mode day one, which like IR game was a part of it, right? We did
mhm,
a 2 hour, hour and a half IR game with the entire audience, and
yep,
then surreptitiously setting them up for failure, and then kick the sandcastle over at night. It takes us about 5 or 6 hours to do that. Sometimes it did. This time it was only 3.5, 4 hours. Kick over the sandcastle, make sure we built a really good, clean storyline, and then day two we just let the audience figure out what to do when they're presented with ransomware,
yeah.
right? And then when that audience is presented with ransomware, they then have to walk through. So anyways, let's get back to the consulting. I wasn't here to talk about me, but let's go through what you started doing, and you talked about the phase that you were in right now in this consulting gig.
Yeah, so I mean, part of it is just the initial kind of discovery phase. So what are you trying to do? I use what I learned over 30 years ago now in college when I was learning software development, where we had input, process, output.
Mhm.
So this is an IPO chart. So you start with what outputs are we trying to do? Well, in this case, you're trying to let vendors have a showcase of here's what our tools can do,
Exactly.
but you're trying to educate and not, for lack of a better term, bore the audience, watching them go through a configuration step by step by step, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. That was the one you honed in on in our
yeah, so
conversation.
okay, that's cool. So the output is that you want the vendors to be able to showcase and the students to be able to learn what the vendor can do for them.
Yeah.
But and your input is what in this case? Well, your input is they do have a tool, but you don't necessarily have to step through all the
Yeah.
let's configure it. You could have it pre-configured and say, we've configured it to control these things
And maybe
as
even
an example.
screenshots of that, or quickly showing the platform where it was set, but not walking through
Yeah.
click here, click there, click there. So that was your suggestion there. So one of the things that you've done now is like, okay, well, input. You're given a process for that. So
Right.
tell me about your consulting life. What all have you done, and then what kind of leads us here, and what's the current climate like? Any of those you want to tackle right now, and or wherever you want to go with it, man.
Yeah, I mean, from a consulting standpoint, it's been an interesting ride for me. Kind of that. So I mean, I'm solo right now. I have people I can reach out to pull in to help with stuff as I need. But it's that same old thing you hear. It's a feast or famine. So you
Sure.
when you have the feast, you got to save up and try to ride through the famine. Um, I do think things have, from that standpoint, are starting to shift a bit, and part of that is thanks to the AI buzz. But I think that's part of that technologist piece, that you have to be up to date with the current things.
Yeah.
And to me, AI is just another tool you use to try to say, okay, how can this now be added to a solution? I think the challenge right now with a lot of small to mid-sized businesses, which is my primary target, I do work up from there some, but one of the challenges is that people have that kind of FOMO, the fear of missing out, like, oh, I saw this AI presentation. We got to get AI in my company, so come help me get AI in the company. But then when you get there, if you actually do your due diligence and work through the process with them, you realize you're not ready for AI. You like
Yeah.
you don't even have MFA installed. Let's talk about that first,
And
and
you
then
don't have business
you
processes.
have
You
no
don't know what your
processes.
inputs or outputs are. You don't know
Yeah,
who
you
the
don't have
people in the middle
any of
making the
that.
sausage is. Yeah.
And there are a lot of tools that can help with process that have nothing to do with AI and have been around for years.
I'm glad you bring this up because, like, it's the and I don't wanna decry the difference that AI will make in our world and is making in our world. I'm not being that naysayer. But I am saying so many times, and Jason loves to point this out too, I should just, like, have a dinger every time I make a Jason reference. I'm such a fanboy, it's a real problem. But, like, just because you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Yeah,
And and
exactly.
and, what I was talking about, I met a company, maybe a little bit of tangent, but I had posited that there will be these WAFs or, kind of, initial proxy filters for, LLMs and other things, and you've seen it develop, right? But everybody seems to take, "Oh, we built this with AI," or "This is AI, this is AI," as opposed to more modern approaches that I just saw on another product. I won't name the name, but where they're or not modern, a different approach. That was dumb of me. But a different approach where they're saying, "Hey, you know what we'll do? We'll just take the data that we find that matches these DLP rules, the traditional machine learning understanding of these contexts of things that are now violating PII, PHI, other information. We'll pull that out before it goes to the LLM. We'll control that proxy. And then when it comes back, we'll rehydrate it and delete the information we have. And so now we've only sent non-PII,
Basically
non-contextual, right?
tokenizing all the
Yeah.
pieces so you can reflip them when they come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No mention of AI in it, but creating tools for AI and protections of AI that exist, right? And they also have
Yeah.
some models they're providing, and it's a
Yeah.
cheaper cost, blah, blah, blah. But the point is like interesting to see people start to say it's not always a hammer, but we
Right.
do have to protect these hammers that we have, and we do have to deal with these hammers and these nails. So to your point, and I asked this question to kind of kick it back to you. What percentage of the time do you walk in and actually consult way less about AI and way more about that saw, way more about that table saw, and way more about the, you know what I mean, all the screws, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I probably 95% of the time. It's it's when I'm pulled in for AI, it's often, okay, wait, we got to fix this first. So I do predominantly work in the Microsoft ecosystem. And so one of the first questions is, how do you handle security around SharePoint? Let's talk about
Sure.
that. Oh, I don't know. Let me look. Oh, you've assigned individual users to all these different things. And wait, why does this front end person who's doing XYZ, why do they have access to your HR and accounting
Yeah.
sites?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. That was set up by 3 MSPs ago. Okay,
Ugh.
well, somebody took your server that was on-prem and said,
And
"We're just
matched
gonna
it.
copy all this
Yeah.
up to SharePoint,"
Oh gosh, you're
right?
making my stomach turn, Steven. That's not real, right? You're just making this
So
up for bad bedtime stories.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It helps my beard grow.
It seems like it's growing grayer like mine is when I
That's
see
right.
these things. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's stuff like that. And so I have a list of questions that I like to kick over if they have an MSP. Hey, have your MSP answer these and we'll jump on and talk
How
about them. But
responsive are the MSPs to that now? I'd have to imagine it's getting better.
so I think it's one of those areas it's like a lot of other areas. It's how you present it, right? So
Okay. In what way?
if you present it to them and can talk with them around, hey, I'm not here to take your job. I'm not an MSP, right? So that's the first scare. Somebody else with IT knowledge is coming in to try to tell me how to do my job. No, I'm trying to help you convince the
Okay.
customer that all the stuff you've been telling them for the past 2, 3 years, they need
Hopefully.
to do before we implement AI.
Yeah.
And so most of them, and again, this is a sign to me of the maturity of a lot of the MSPs I'm running into is most of them don't know how to talk to the client to explain the risk and
Yeah.
what
I
the
agree.
reward is and have that conversation of, okay, if you're acceptable of this risk, this is what this means. Or if we implement this, this is how your risk is reduced, right? But they
Yeah.
don't have
Sure.
that overall knowledge of talking with the client. So
Is it a lack of speaking in risk, or is it a lack of speaking at all about it,
I think
whether they're terming it in risk or not?
yeah, I think it's just they don't understand the business back to our original talk. So
Okay.
they don't understand how to relay it back in a business voice that the CEO can say, "Oh, okay, I understand what you're talking
I'm
about."
glad you said business voice, right? I don't want to get off on too far of a tangent, but that assumes paradigmatic difference, right? That I'm speaking from the lens and the understanding of how this impacts or benefits the business. And I'd also like your take on this. I have a CEO that, and I want you just to chew on it and decide what your thoughts are on it. But
Okay.
she said to me, Matt, I get you. I was like, okay, what? She was like, I get the problem we have. And I think she was kind of brilliant in this, but it's anyways. I'll say it. She said, "I get you." She said, "My job as a CEO of a company is to take a business risk and be rewarded for that. I'll put out money to bet that people and consumers will respond to this service or offering or money or line or software I'm building, or I take risk, and
Right.
for that, as a capitalist, I'm rewarded for that risk." Which means when you come to me and only talk about the negative sides of risk and the things that I
Yep.
shouldn't take, I don't want to hear it. But if you tell me the ones I should take in obverse, right? And I'm adding some things to her original
Sure.
statement. But if you were to pivot that to just here's the risks and here's the ones I think you should take, here's the ones you shouldn't, here's my thoughts on these, here's how they impact you. But in order to do that effectively, you have to know the business, you have to know the risk, you
Right.
have to understand the threat
So
model to some extent. Anyways,
yeah,
go.
so my push on that would be that's where I think a lot of I don't know if it's a lot of us, but that's where some of us are saying as especially if you're talking about MSP, but if you're a consultant of any type in this arena, you need to be a trusted advisor. And that's where I think a lot of the mistakes happen or the lack
Wait,
of
wait, wait. I want to pause. Most people that say they're a trusted advisor, in my experience, have been, "Hey, we're really good at knowing when your PC refresh cycle is going to happen and what your budget like across
no,
your." Okay, not that's not what you're talking about here.
no,
Sorry, I'm pulling
that's okay.
strings.
You throwing me a softball there?
I
So,
am, buddy.
so appreciate that.
I got
Yes.
you.
From me, trusted advisor side is I understand your business. I understand what you're trying to do. Let me help bring solutions to you that help you do that better.
Sure.
And that may be I'm helping improve process, which makes you more efficient. That may be I'm helping add security, which reduces some of your exposure and risk. It may be that I'm introducing a new application you hadn't thought of that's now helping you get more experience and exposure to your clients than you had
Yeah.
before, which is increasing your bottom line, which again, that's the type of stuff that a lot of people miss. So what I was going to get to is I think the reason that we're hurting a lot in the MSP space, especially, is a lot of MSPs are formed from a person who was a technical engineer who
Hmm.
says, "Wow, I just helped my brother's company and I'm doing IT there. You know, I could probably spin out and make my own MSP.
Yeah. 100%.
Voila, I now have my own MSP." And so their mindset is still the approach of I'm providing technical support to your company.
Right.
Well, then people added on the VCIO, but I think there was a pretty big voice. This is my own little rub. I think it was a pretty big voice in the MSP community that said, well, your VCIO should be driving NRR and X amount of MRR, which to me, then you just turn them into a salesperson,
Right.
not a trusted advisor. And they took a lot of engineers and said, oh, we're going to actually promote you to a VCIO role, but we're not going to spend the time to educate you on what that means, how to understand a business, how to talk to a business leader in something that they understand. And even that's different. If you're talking to the CFO, they
Yeah.
have a different, they're there for a
Their
different
lens is
reason.
different.
So
Yeah.
you need to talk to that lens so they understand it.
Yeah. I wonder this. What's your, let's say I'll give you a couple of scenarios. Let's say you focused on a vertical, right? Let's say you, Steven, focus on a specific vertical. Does that affect the learning curve of a new client and a new consulting role?
Sure.
And then also, what's that learning curve like in the non-verticalized world where you're stepping into something you don't understand and you're having to do processes? Tell me about those two different worlds a little bit,
Yeah.
please.
So I think it's the same argument whether you're an MSP or doing straight consulting. I think there's a play for generalists and then there's a play for people who do specialize. So from an MSP point of view, um, it's easier if you specialize. A lot of people will say this: pick your vertical and go, because then you learn the specifics around the
Yeah.
type of tools
You
they're.
know that Resware and several of these other programs in the identity software, when you're talking about like title software, I met a MSP that they know that stuff left, right, back.
Absolutely.
They live it,
You
they breathe it.
you can
Yeah,
dive deep, especially if you're in a one that has compliance requirements,
sure.
right? You understand, hey, if you're in this industry, these are your requirements for
Yeah,
reporting if
yeah,
this happens. These are, you get all of that, right? So it's
that's right.
much easier. The flip side of that, which is where I consider myself as more of a generalist, I now have experience from lots of different industries.
Sure.
And I can now say, when I was helping this manufacturing plant,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
did it this way, which I think we could apply here to
It's
this
like
process.
beginner's mind, right? Ashley likes to talk about that, Ashley Cooper, about this beginner's mind. You get to walk in fresh.
Yeah.
So what's the difference in that time curve though? Like how many more hours do you put in when you are a beginner's mind in a process and having to learn that vertical for that purpose? Like when I do my talks, I talk about how many hours I put in research, right? Just to make sure I don't sound like a nincompoop. What
Right.
does that look like for you when you step in as a consultant into a vertical you're just not familiar with? I know there'll be crossovers that apply. Just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question because I've been in this 30 years, so I don't know. 30 years?
Right.
I
Okay,
don't
so,
know. I have a
that's fair.
I
Okay,
have
that's
a
fair.
also I have a unique advantage of I do have a very blended background. So I've done a ton of
Sure.
software development all the way up through
Yeah.
managing dev teams, and I've done a ton of network. And so most companies, when I wasn't consulting, when I was at the company, I had both departments reporting to me because I
Yeah.
was able to talk to the dev team, the dev
Okay.
leads, the product side, and talk to the engineering side.
I don't think I've ever shared this. First off, I'll just say hey to Dom.
Hey,
What's
Dom.
up? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, I said, my man, preach it. VCIOs are soft, and when you're going off on your tangent about that.
Oh, I'm gonna
VCIOs are often not. See, go,
I'm
get
gonna
after
go
it.
do another
Go
tangent
do it.
off of
Go. I
that.
love that you're triggered by it. I can come back to
No,
mine.
I've I'm triggered because I've also started to see a lot of, and this is just my own personal side, but I see a lot of MSPs that have a CTO.
Hmm.
So I think that's one of the challenges the tech industry in general has. We have too many acronyms and they mean different things to different people. Just
True
like saying,
story.
"Oh, AI, go use AI." Well,
Yeah,
what does that
yeah,
mean?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Right? But to me, probably because I've done both, the CTO is much more software dev, kind of building for external,
Here
typically
would
focused
There you
product
go.
side,
Let me ask
right?
you this then on that just definition. My CTO role that I held was about the tools we used, how they were constructed, how they were tied to our own internal environment for the delivery of those things to our external humans.
Mhm.
So to your point, that's where we aligned that as an external build out thing, right?
Yeah.
In that way.
Now,
But to your,
you can
anyways, just your
still, by
thoughts
the
on that.
way, you can still, in my mind, have a CTO that's very product focused for a product that's used by your internal people.
For external extent, like I owned at that time all of our core services team and our security team and our identity teams, so that we could manage that in that way. But I do agree with your pushback on that. Of that is a fair delineation. I agree with that definition in my opinion.
I tend to have CTO as more software product
So what's
development
CIO then on this
focused.
side?
CIO is more typically more internal, what would have traditionally been like your network, your servers, your Exchange server, and all that, which is now shifted to cloud as well. But it's more of that infrastructure support. or
And where the
management.
data is, I would wager lives under
Sure.
that, data
Yep.
segmentation, understanding,
Yeah. And
and
that's where
yeah.
you may end up with a blend, right?
Sure.
Because and I think that's a big one. That's a whole different discussion
I didn't mean to
on dev
trigger
teams.
that. Dom
That's okay.
Dom did drag us down this path.
That's
I'll
right.
go back to
What were you
what
gonna
you
say?
triggered me with, and see,
Yeah,
I actually have a memory for it today. I don't know
that's
how.
good.
It's been a long month. Um, but basically, before I found IT, every 3 to 4 years, I would get bored and do something completely different. Like, I first started with my Series 7 66L HVA, or life health variable annuities, 66 being your blue sky laws, Series 7 being the stockbroker's aspect of it, and hung my shingle under an external and then an internal, had my own. Then also went back and sold it to a friend. And then I got tired of that, went into banking, did banking for 4 or 5 years, and then left banking as a AVP, with meant more title, not more pay, right? So it just meant more debt too. But then I eventually went into mortgages until the '08 collapse and the collateralized mortgage obligation challenges that happened. FHA shut down for very low scores for a lot of banks and lenders. And I stopped being the guy. And I'll go into a long version one day if somebody catches me at a bar. Then after that, I went into helping a guy get rid of some collateral that led me to non-numismatic gold trading after numismatic offloading of some stuff. So like the collectible stuff. And then I went into non-numismatic gold buying at that time when the collapse happened. We had
And
cash
people
and
wonder why you're bald.
yeah, no doubt. But I got bored and I eventually did diamond buying and selling across the lower half of the United States. And then with a couple of Armenian guys, just a fun story. But I then landed in tech.
Yeah.
And what was so unique about tech, and I came in as technician number 7 at an MSP that was converting from block hours. I got to genuinely take my curiosity and
Mhm.
apply it by asking a business owner, "What do you do here? How does this work? How do you make money?" And they love answering that question.
Yep.
And so for me, it was like this never ending set of curiosities around tech and how it all connects and how it works and what I can build with it. But at the same time, asking questions of every different industry. Like I understand that at least in the automobile industry or auto body shop industry, they often sell their souls to the paint companies, right? Where the paint gives them tons of money. But then once they have that, they have to sell so many gallons of paint and they have to do so many things. And so like you have these, and that's just one example, but there's tons of those things you learn by just waiting and asking somebody how they make money that they're willing to talk about that then matters. And in my mind, that's a lot of what consulting is getting enough context and understanding of a business either as a macro system,
Yeah.
right, or as a micro for them in that way.
Yeah, and I think so to your point, like I did welding in high school, right? So I
Nice.
learned about stick welding and MIG welding and
Note to
all of
self:
that, right?
Stephen can help Matt with project number 7.
Oh, no. Is that the new December project this
I
year?
got some new projects. We're gonna have to chat about it, man. Yeah.
Um, so because of that, I've gone into different companies, and when we're talking about, oh, they put these pieces together, manufacturing company, then I can talk to that
Right.
because I've got that in my background.
Yep.
Um, however, I have enough in my background, and if I go into a space like that, if I didn't have the belt welding background, I'd be like, okay, well, are there different mechanisms for putting these together, for holding them together? Because I mean,
A
I'm
beginner's mind.
57 now. I
Yeah.
kind of have an idea of how a lot of things should probably work. So you can ask questions, even if you don't know the industry, that will help you then lay it out.
Sure.
The other thing I do a lot is how does data move through your system? And I don't necessarily pose it that way, but let's start. How do you get your clients? Okay, where do you put them in that system? What is that system? And then where do you go from? Well, we drop a message in Slack to let this person know, and then they go back into the sales system to then pull the data out and put it over into our other system for processing. Then, okay, so you start mapping all that out, and
Sure.
I'll draw a diagram. You've seen
Yeah.
some of the stuff that I've done that way.
Yeah,
But
I
but
keep going.
it's just being able to talk them through that process, because a lot of times they don't
They don't even
overtly
they
think
might not
they
even know.
understand it, and
Yeah.
then sometimes you do have to get, well, okay, who knows this particular part? Let's get that subject matter expert in,
Sure.
and we'll talk in detail about that.
Yeah. How receptive are companies to that, kind of mapping process? Like, do you find that because they've paid you, they humor the conversation most of the time? I don't mean humor in a negative way,
I
but
think
like,
it's almost like asking the CEO, "How do you make money?"
okay,
Right? Because
okay,
they've kind of defined things out and they think they know the best way, and
yeah,
but as they're talking, you'll also realize when you hit points that they know this is a stupid system, but it's how they've always done it, and it works.
They look down as they talk about it, is
Yeah,
what
it's
they're
like,
saying.
well, and then
Well, you know, I just
one of my favorite questions is, okay, great. How many spreadsheets do you have?
yeah. Why?
Oh,
What
man.
are you trying to get at there? Help me understand that.
So that's a good way to determine what's missing in
Okay.
systems and in process,
The
because
manual processes that
what
exist to
they will
solve
do
that?
is, yeah, oh, well, I have, my assistant will go and into this system and copy a bunch of stuff out and dump it into the spreadsheet. And then we run these formulas. And then I look at that to try to tell me what's happening region by region, or they'll use that to try to drive data
Yeah,
analysis, if you
sure.
will. Well, why are you doing that? Why don't we create a data warehouse that pulls data from 4 different systems that you're trying to get all collected in this spreadsheet that you run manually 3 times a week because you would love to have it daily, but you don't because it takes too long to do. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah. Those are those quick wins though, I guess. I mean, I think you have this like long-term strategy, I'm
Yeah,
guessing, and then this like, "Oh my god, where can I just stop Sally from wanting to shoot herself
yeah.
every Thursday when she clicks that please render button on getting this Excel file," right? Like if that
Yeah,
can happen.
and
Yeah,
the
go.
other thing you can talk to there is, okay, you're now manually copying stuff out,
Sure.
so you hope you do it right.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
you
one
can
of the
automate that, and you know it's done because the system runs the same way every single time and pulls it out.
there's a CIS safeguard in 7 that speaks towards, or I'm sorry, in 14 that speaks towards training your users to recognize and report failed updates, comma, space, and automated processes, right? And it's that second half I think that we're speaking towards is like oftentimes in a business there will have been a plan and that plan is broken down, right? In this case that I'm talking about, there was a doctor's office that was making a pretty stupid argument about shared machines as kiosks with logins. And their argument was that because it was all done in the EMR, even the printing, that they didn't have to deal with that. And the sign into the EMR was where the PII was and PHI was. Oh, my camera just died. That's cool. We didn't have to talk to Matt anyway. We'll go to the back of Matt's head shot.
Woohoo!
So we're going to talk to the back of Matt's head that hasn't been shaven because I've been really lazy this week. So like, I'm totally telling him.
Hey, I gave myself the
Yeah.
haircut this morning,
Did you? You're a good man. I didn't, and it's my show.
and it shows.
I'm an idiot. Oh, thanks, buddy. You know what? We're just gonna go to straight Steven space. I'm just gonna disappear. I bet it's back. It kind of blinks sometimes. Let's see.
Nope,
Nope. I'm gonna kill it and bring it back. All
Matt's
right.
in the dark,
Yep. 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 No worries. We're doing it live, boys.
doing it
Doing it
live.
live. Anyways, I was about to go off on a
Oh, there you are.
tangent, and I don't remember where it was because of the doing it live part. Um,
Welcome to live.
walk me back, Steven. I was about to go down a path.
We had talked about people basically setting up kind of those safeguards around
Yeah,
if
CIS
stuff's
safeguard
gone.
around
Yeah,
training, there's automated
yeah,
processes, right? And so in this case, the doctor's office or whatever it was, I think it was a
yeah.
doctor, had made a decision that because their EMR printed only, and that was everything, but the printing stopped working. And what ended up happening was the girls had the printer still local, and guys had the printer still local, the front end staff, and so they just would download a PDF to the machine, and then they would print from their printer there, and voila, it's solved. No problem. Nobody had educated them that that might be a
Except
problem,
they probably had
except
the same nurses walking around to different
uh,
stations, which means those stations all had that data
littered
local
with data
versus,
everywhere.
yeah,
Yep, and they had an incident, and they had
yeah,
challenges, and we came in as that played out, and it was disgusting how many records had been printed over 3 months of or so of this happening. Anyways, ugliest one of the ugliest didn't know this process had broken examples that I've ever seen.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, to your point,
But
it can be yeah. Go continue. You had a thought.
that's part of the other thing. So I will say it's not completely new ground for MSPs to jump into being that trusted advisor.
No.
If they start thinking about things like, oh, well, how do I have the conversation around, like, are they doing business impact assessments?
Yep.
Right. But typically what they're focusing on, what are those key data sources that I have to make sure we're backing up? And it's done more from a BCDR standpoint,
Yep. I would say
business
that's true.
continuity, disaster recovery. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta
Um,
tap it before you use it on this channel, right? Yeah.
so, but I think that, if you take that kind of mindset of this simple scope of I'm making sure their data is okay,
Yep.
it's a similar conversation. There's more to it, but it's like, okay, well, what else is there, and what processes are there? But
Yeah.
part of that again goes into how much are you doing at home versus for your clients.
Yeah.
So start there. Okay, well, what processes do we have? Where are
Oh,
the
that's
pain
fun.
points?
Yeah.
What do we do that's just, "Oh, man, I hate doing this every time. It's such a pain." Well, great. How can you
Now
automate
you're
that?
pivoting, just to be clear, to the MSP in the
Yeah,
you you're
it
speaking of now, right? Is
yeah,
is that your thought, or the practitioner?
yeah.
Um, yeah, continue. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, so it's how can we do this internally? How do we have those conversations? And if you really wanted to start training somebody, I recommend this even if, like, you have a VCIO, you should have that VCIO be the VCIO for your company, your MSP,
You would learn
right?
a lot about its
So now I sit
efficacy.
down with the
Yeah,
CEO and then say, "I need to learn about your business. How do you make money? How does data flow through your business? What are your pain points? How do we help?" Then you have your project team go in and implement that, which is good because it puts the CEO out of the "I'm solutioning for you"
yeah.
and back to the "I'm the CEO working on my business, not in it."
Yeah. Yeah. And it solves that problem. I mean, when I remember when I said this probably on here, if not I said it earlier, but the first couple of clients we took to Modern, where it was all autopilot and Entra and all that, fired us. As in my MSP, this was in 2016, 17, or whenever Intune was becoming a real thing and viable, and Entra ID and AADJ or AADJ was viable. Azure Active Directory joined, right, and Azure Active Directory by proxy of that. But anyways, at that time, this was a client. It was an agriculture recruiting client, which meant that they had recruiters that lived in little tiny communities all over, and they recruited agriculture employees, like a very
Mhm.
nuanced business. And one of their
Yep.
challenges was they were on a software that was really, really slow, and it was dependent on VPNs and a lot of this stuff. And we deployed a different model that took everything to ADJ, went to the cloud model, and now the internet from everybody's little farmhouse went out to the
Right.
internet that was close, and there wasn't all this backhauling challenges and all the problems we had. But they basically came to me, 6, 7 months later and said, "Hey, listen, we're gonna need to reduce the contract, or get down to less services, or fire y'all." And we didn't have a path to go lower than the service model we had. And so it was one of those where the answer they said to me was, "Y'all are not providing enough strategic value to us now. Things just work. All the things we paid you for were predominantly those things, and most of that functions. And we think we can, and they weren't wrong. I wasn't adding enough value. We weren't real VCIOs. We weren't really dealing in any level of
Right.
security. Security hadn't hit as hard at that point in 2016, 2017 for that SMB practitioner in that non-regulated industry in that regard, right? And all they had was PII to deal with predominantly. Anyways, and so yeah, it was one of those things where we learned from that and had to develop better consultancy into their business and understand what value we're bringing, reinforce some things that we were bringing as value. There was some failure there too, but and then pivot and change what we were delivering, right? And so I like your ask to have them have someone ask their CEO, like whoever your VCIO is, if you guys are small enough as an org, or even if you're a larger org, you could go down some alternate path of this potentially. Go sit down with CEO and ask, how do we make money? What are the things that we have? And then you can go talk to your service department and ask, what do we have problems here? What is the problem on the support desk? What are the biggest things that we could optimize? And it's that exact function, right, Stephen? Or am I
Yeah.
bastardizing that?
No, that's good. But I think the other thing that's pretty critical to talk through as well is what are the business goals for this year? What are the business goals for next year?
Yeah.
Because you don't just need to provide solutions. You need to how do you tie those to this
Oh,
is helping you hit your business goals by
yeah.
doing this. This is reducing risk of you missing your goals by
Yep.
doing this. So
Yeah.
all of those you're again, it's getting back to speaking the business language of how do we tie what we're saying you need to do. It,
Yep.
so much of it is the wavy hand of, oh no, security and threat actors, and it's terrible, and you need to do this because why? Why do I
Yeah.
care?
Yeah. No.
As a business owner.
Yeah, that, and I think you can weave that in as you answer the other questions,
Yeah,
right? Like as you say, "Hey, let's optimize this process." Maybe we take it from some jackass puts it on a flash drive and carries it in their pocket to a more modern delivery mechanism that has our ability to monitor what happens to it, or right, those kind of things
right.
that don't change the outcome of the process, or at least right, the to your point,
And
inputs and outputs.
yep. And some of that
So
is compliance driven, right? So that has
sure.
its own thing. Like you are obligated to do this by law.
which makes it a little easier
Okay.
as long as you can convince that
Right.
understanding, right?
Right.
But I wanted to go back to something else about, like, you're talking about when it comes to goals, that's getting strategic, right?
Yes.
Like, you're getting into strategy now of, like, how do I help you meet these goals? And then you get into tactics and operations, right? So tactics will be things that serve that strategy and are more tactical. Obviously, I hate using the same word for a definition. I
Yeah.
apologize. More kinetic, if you will. And then operational are very detailed in getting into that. So some processes in that operational space that there's improvement, but I love starting at the strategy and then identifying where those key processes are that matter towards that strategy from a tactics perspective, right? And I'll give you an example. Like, one of my businesses needed to be able to take a larger contract from their manufacturing prime. And they knew that their floor would not support it beyond what they'd already done from an optimization over the last 3 years. And they said, we need to get a new building, and we're going to build it on this piece of property we've acquired. That allowed us, when we made our next decisions about server infrastructure, to decide, and this is going back, to do dark fiber across that property, get those permits done, get it done over the next 3 months to serve the tactics that allowed us to plug in the switches and build the building. But in the
Yeah.
same boat, I have a VCIO that didn't know that this other office was expanding until they said, "Hey, we're in 3 days. Can y'all come put the switch in?
Right.
Where are the
Yep.
ports? Where are the tactical,
Yep.
actual pieces I need to connect together to make this function so you can have phones at your desk and
But
anyways, yeah."
but the difference there, so I have a couple goals with clients.
What up,
Um,
Tim? Sorry, I just want to pause and say hey to Tim. Tim
hey
says the
Tim,
CIO expectations getting huge, given AI automation. Yeah, like
absolutely.
absolutely. Like, in unison. But Jinx, you owe me a
Yep.
soda, Stephen Kellogg. Anyways, yeah.
So I was gonna say I have a couple of goals with my clients. One is I want to get them to think of technology as an enabler
Yep.
instead of an expense,
Yep.
right? Well, you do that by shifting their mindset because you become a trusted advisor for solutions to help them meet their business goals. The other thing is, you can't throw text up while I'm talking, Matt.
I can too. It's what I do. It's my damn show, and you can't tell me
Oh,
how to
okay,
run it.
fine. I just want to read it. um, yeah,
ADHD.
but the other part of it is, you knew that because you were in conversation and they trusted you enough to say, "Hey, by
Yeah,
the way, we
100%.
have this expansion happening."
Yep.
So when you start finding yourself being pinged because, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you
Yeah.
think?"
Yeah.
Now you know you've hit that
Yeah.
trusted advisor
100%.
piece.
I'm glad you made
And
that point, even with my expense.
especially when it's not a quote unquote technical thing they're thinking about.
Yeah, I agree.
We're
That is
looking
right.
at acquiring this company.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah.
think? Oh,
Yeah.
well, you need to do due
Oh,
diligence.
bro.
I
Yeah,
can talk to you
100%.
about the business side of that and the technical side of that.
Which really gets right into Tim's comment, and so it's literally perfect. He says, right, so his expectation is, like, you're expected to be in-house strategy guy, back to Steven's starting point, and hopefully you are, to Steven's point, right? You're called and asked and brought in, with playbooks aligned with that hard-earned knowledge of business and their
Yeah,
business in
yeah,
specificity. And then Tim sure said, "Love hearing you guys." Well, I love you too, buddy. I think, we feel like people that I said to Steven before the show, like, I'm wearing the choir robes, right? I'm ready. I got hymnal in hand. I'm standing up with polished shoes on. Like, I'm here preaching we got to get deeper in the business
yeah,
mantra. It's funny because my CEO Chris Hoos, this is so many moons ago, probably 2014 or 2013, said to a client once. They said, "I'm tired of this IT expense," and he said,
yep.
"All right, cool. I'm going to drive up there this Saturday and I'm going to pick up every computer, every firewall, wireless access point, cell phone, everything in your business. And I want you to operate for 2 weeks. And when you're done, you tell me if that's an investment or an expense."
Yeah.
And I know that's hyperbolous and bastardized, but, like,
No, but it's a difference
it's
in mindset.
yeah, it is a difference in mindset. Anyways, and then Tim also said, "I'll shut up, but I have been talking with the venture capital guys on how the businesses don't need dollar investments anymore. They need CIO, AI magic, low cost investment, but know how to take all the problems and solution them." And I'll pop that
Yep.
up there just for that. And this is one
Yeah.
I don't know that I have time to dig into, since we are definitely at the top of our hour.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
but I will say, if anybody's interested in this talk again, I could talk about this with Steven for, I don't know, eons. Is that a measurable number that humans are expected to live? I don't believe it is, but I'm hoping I can. I'm so nerdy about this topic because it does
Same.
matter.
Yeah.
Tim, great. Thanks for having you here. I'm gonna
I,
say, oh, he said glass is like 80% full. Let's get it. I love it. I agree. Yeah, we're way more than half full optimist at this point,
but
bro. Go,
but I
Steven.
will say that I think this is the area that MSPs need to lean into,
Agreed.
or they may not be MSPs in a couple years.
It'll be. it'll be something. So I would concur. The time horizon is nigh.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know. I don't know if it's a couple years, but or they'll just stagnate at a certain. This is what I do, right? Because there are always those
yeah.
those
I'll
people.
end with this joke. Actually, that's not really a joke. It was an actual truism, which sucks. Is my VP of operations, the head of our company when we were about 20, probably 30 million in revenue, somewhere in that range, looked at me and said, "Matt, I'm never going to accuse you about being very wrong about the what, but I'm never going to accuse you about being right about the when." And I was like, "Fair. That really sucks for business decisions, unfortunately." I digress. But
Okay, I'll
anyway,
give my one little quick
okay,
fun
cool.
fun one. So early on in my career, I had an accountant who said, "You need to prioritize fixing my staff's computers because I'm the one that submits payroll." And I said, "Oh, well, you need to let me do my job because if I if I want to shut down computers, you won't get your own payroll." He's like, "Oh no, no, I was just kidding. I'm just playing around." I was like, "Okay, you
Touchette.
weren't. You really weren't. You were
Yeah,
trying
you weren't.
to
You were
to
flexing.
play a
Yeah,
heavy
yeah,
hand."
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
but
that's
that's
so funny.
again, that's that
Oh, that's
part of that.
awesome.
It's a business thing, and it's not just an expense. It's the same
Yeah,
kind of concept. It's like, nope.
yeah. And it's all
Anyway,
about mindset shift, and I think you said
yeah,
it really well, and I'll close with this, is like, you have to understand enough empathy to understand how someone is going to receive a message for your
yep,
message to be effective, right? And that's what I'll
yep,
end with on this is, like, if you're consulting, in my opinion, have enough empathy to try to think, what does Steven care about? What are the things that matter to him? And how do I need to present what I already know is true, or else I wouldn't be sitting here, to this person and get them to buy into this concept? So,
yep.
any closing thoughts?
Nope, that was a good one to close on.
All
I
right,
like it.
man. We'll close on that thing. That's Stephen Kellogg
Fun
approved.
combo.
Oh hell, I'll take it. All right. Thank y'all for being